Hi, I'm Alasdair Post-Quinn from Falling Blocks Designs. I've been developing double knitting techniques and designing patterns for over 20 years and have helped thousands of knitters like you learn and expand their knowledge of double knitting. In 2022 and 2023, I ran a series of recorded virtual workshops, and I'm now releasing those recordings for free. Why? Check the blog post I've linked below. You'll also find a handout for this workshop and some other useful links. Please note, this recording is from a live recorded virtual workshop, so it's not as polished or concise as a tutorial made for this format might normally be. As I have time, I may choose to re-record some of these workshops. Without further ado, please enjoy. Hello, I'm Alasdair Post-Quinn, and this is 3-color double knitting. I'm going to start off with a little introduction to myself and my work, and do a little show and tell, and then we'll get into the knitting. You should hopefully by now, if you followed the homework, have just a couple of rows of knitting. If you don't already, then well, of course you can pause the video at any point and start and get that going. So anyway, let's do a little intro. So I am Falling Blocks Designs. You can find me at double-knitting.com, which you presumably already know because you are presumably watching this video on that site. Other places you can find me: my blog, my Facebook page, my Ravelry page, my mailing list, and my Patreon. The mailing list, you should have had the opportunity to sign up on the main list, but if you want to sign up on individual workshop interest lists or workshop category interest lists, then go to that link, double-knitting.com/signup, and you'll have a bunch of other options. And my Patreon is a good place right now to get discounts on more of these workshops and workshop recordings. I've done a couple of books. Extreme Double Knitting was my first, came out in 2011, and then the revised edition came out in 2018 after I got the rights back from the publisher. In between the two came another book called Double or Nothing. Both of them have multicolor or 3-color double knitting in them, and it was really introduced in the first book, as you'll see in the show and tell, and expanded on in other places. Some of those other places include the Parallax booklet, which you can see here. Any of this stuff you buy off my website, by the way, will come with a free PDF download, and you can, of course, get the PDFs on their own through Ravelry and other places. Just go to my website and check. And that's about that, or that's about it for that. So, on to the show and tell. So, as I mentioned, this is 3-color double knitting. This is a sort of new formulation of a class that I have been teaching for a while, called multicolor double knitting. Multicolor double knitting was a class that has that starts off the same way this class will start, but then went into a 2-pattern version where 2 different patterns were done on either side, but still in 3 colors. The new multicolor class is actually 3 and 4 colors, but still staying within the single pattern. And the new 2-pattern workshop is dealing with 2-color and 3-color 2-pattern double knitting. So this class, 3-color double knitting, just deals with adding a 3rd color to your double knitting. So double knitting in general is a fabric with no wrong side, and in normal 2-color double knitting you have a motif on one side and a motif in opposite colors and opposite orientation on the other side. Now clearly opposite colors are going to be hard to do in 3 colors. So this is a 3-color piece. This is called Structure. It's out of my book Extreme Double Knitting. It's a revised version actually, so the original version of this looked somewhat different from my 2011 edition, and this is out of the 2018 edition. It's more sizable, it's more wearable, it's out of sport weight yarn rather than worsted, and all of that doesn't really matter because it's still just an illustration of a technique. As you can see, we've got 3 colors. We've got the background, and then 2 motif colors. We've got a lighter motif color and a darker motif color on this layer. And then on the other layer, we have the lighter motif color goes to the background. The darker motif color becomes the main motif, becomes the main motif color where the light motif color was, and the accent bit of the motif is the remaining 3rd color that was the background on the other layer. So basically what I'm trying to show here is that you can do the same pattern on both sides, but you have to choose a color rotation. The colors, rather than simply switching from A to B, B to A, have to rotate in a particular direction. Now, this is one possible color rotation for this hat. There are actually 6 possible color rotations for this particular pattern. The rest of them are sort of left as an exercise to the reader. One of these days I might get around to knitting the other 5 as swatches just to show the options, but I have been promising that for probably at least a decade, and nothing has happened yet, so my guess is it will never happen. So anyway, this is Structure. The next one that I want to show is out of my book Double or Nothing, really the only fully multicolor piece in that book. I felt like I dealt mostly very well with multicolor, 3-color and multicolor double knitting in Extreme Double Knitting. But what I didn't deal with in the initial 2011 book was how to deal with edges. As you can see, we've got an edge here, which of course we did not have in the previous circular piece. And I'll just flip this over so you can see that it is a fully 3-color reversible piece. I'm not showing you the entire thing. It's quite a large item. It's a shawl done with a stepped edge here. But it is a flat piece, whereas the original version of Extreme Double Knitting didn't have any flat multicolor double knitting in it, or flat 3-color double knitting in it. Ironically, I suppose, after I did all of this, I got the rights back to the original book, and I got to put this technique that had been missing from the book, the multicolor linked pair that is required to do the clean edge that you're seeing here. I got to put that in the book eventually. So now both books do have that technique. So this is called Waterford Crossing, and it is a shawl in Double or Nothing. And the last bit I have to show you is a piece from the Parallax collection, as I alluded to before. This is Parallax 3.0. It's a scarf, as you can see, very long. It's not that long, but as you can see, the colors continuously change because this is made up not only of 3 colors, but 3 gradient colors, or 3 colorways. So it's one of my op art pieces, and as you can see, it is also a flat piece. So again, you can see the edges. One thing you'll notice about the edges between both this one and the other piece I just showed is that there's always going to be a bit of a border between the edge and the beginning of the pattern. And the reason for that is because there's it's sort of necessary for the multicolor linked pair to work. It requires two pairs actually to achieve the technique, and I'll talk more about that as we get into the workshop. So again, that's Parallax 3.0. You could do that in 3 solids, but it wouldn't be as much fun. Part of the reason that I enjoyed doing that piece so much is because the colors keep going and changing and mixing as you go, and you're not really sure what you're going to get until you get there. So choose 3 different gradients, you'll get something radically different. And honestly, even if you choose the same 3 gradients, the likelihood is that you're going to start in different places than I did, and the color mixture is going to be different, even with the same 3 colors. So we're going to go onward into well, first I'm going to bring in the handout and talk a little bit about what we're about to do. So as I mentioned, you should have 2 rows of plain double knitting in AB, or cast on in BA, worked 1 row in AB and 1 row in BA, just plain with no color changing. And then you've got this handout. So we're going to be following chart 1 and this second item here is the reference chart, which shows what the other layer looks like. There is also a chart 2. We're not going to be following this. It's just I had extra space on the page, and so I offer you another exercise for your own experimentation later, if you so choose. But as you can see, the first 2 rows in chart 1 are the same 2 rows that I just showed, the same 2 rows that were in the homework. In row 3, you can see that we are starting to have color work, and you can see that there are colors of both other colors, motif bits of both other colors. So let me explain a little bit about how we know what to do in various places on this chart. First of all, you take a look at the key. Just as with standard double knitting, the squares in the chart denote pairs of stitches, not just single stitches, and so each of the squares in the key denotes either an AB, a BC, or a CA pair. So that's the color rotation that we're looking at. A to B, B to C, C to A. It's a very simple color rotation. But because it's flat, on the other side of the work, on the other layer, you're going to be following those backwards. Just as with standard double knitting, an AB pair worked on one layer is going to be followed as a BA pair if it were worked on the other layer. The same thing is true here, but then when we get to the next color, which would normally be a BA pair in 2-color double knitting, here it's a BC pair, and on layer 2 rows it's going to be a CB pair. It's just a flip over of the color order that we have on layer 1. So BC flipped over is CB. It's really all that's going on there. And then CA and AC. So layer 1 rows, if you're not familiar with my terminology, layer 1 rows are odd-numbered rows. So the first row that we're going to do is a layer 1 row. You can see here that the odd numbers are all over here, the even numbers are all over here, and so we have an easy guide to which row you're in. So if you're on an odd-numbered row, it's a layer 1 row. If you're on an even-numbered row, it's a layer 2 row. And you'll follow those key columns depending on which row you see that particular color in. So that's a basic rundown of how this chart is going to be followed. So let's actually get into that first row. The multicolored linked pair that I mentioned during the show and tell won't actually start until row 4, until the beginning of row 4. We're just going to add in that third color and let it travel along with us, use it during the motif sections, and then do the multicolor linked pair to take a corner here and go back. And I'll explain about that as we get closer to that point. So we're going to switch over to the hand camera now and get going. So as I've already mentioned, I have here 2 rows of 19 pairs. I've done one row in AB, flipped it over, done another row in BA, and up until now this pretty much looks exactly like standard double knitting. But we're now going to add in a third color just to keep things interesting and to be relevant to the 3-color double knitting that you are here for. So, one second here. I'm noticing my camera is doing something a little weird. I'm just going to fix it. Okay, that should do it. Sorry for the delay. Okay. So, as you can see, I am holding all 3 yarns together. I've got the tail of my color C, my third color, just sort of sticking off the edge here. This is where the tail will end up. I would recommend you make it just a little bit longer than you normally would need to weave in. You can adjust it before you use it, but for the moment it's just going to be traveling along with us, but not actually used until the 7th pair in row 3. So you can, at this point, follow along on your own version of the handout. I'm not going to have the handout up on a regular basis, but I will refer to it periodically throughout the workshop. So, but if you want it, as you should have your own version of it. And if you haven't got one yet, you should go download it from the workshop portal. So we're going to start off with a standard linked pair here. We're not going to do the multicolor one, so we're just going to do a knit through the back of the loop on color A. Bring all 3 yarns to the front. Now don't worry about what color C is up to at the moment. Just make sure it's traveling along with the other 2. And then we're going to do that twist between the A and B and finish the purl. So that links the edge together, but doesn't do anything yet to color C. So we've done the linked pair, and now we're going to do 5 more pairs in AB. Nothing different here except that you have to make sure that color C is still coming with you along with the other 2 yarns. So we've got AB pairs. As you can see, color C is not doing anything in particular, but it does have to ride along with these other 2 pairs to make sure that it ends up hiding inside the work, which is what happens to any unused color in any given pair. It hides and strands inside the work. Okay, so 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 5 plus the original linked pair for a total of 6. And the 7th pair is, on the chart, a red square. And the red square in layer 1, which this is a layer 1 row, is marked as a CA pair, which means that we are now going to knit with C and purl with A. Now, this is the point where you can adjust your tail. So if your tail during those first 6 pairs has gotten really short, like this or something like that, this is exaggerated, but you have the opportunity to lengthen it, because all that's going on here is that it's traveling inside the work from this edge to this point. It hasn't been used yet, so it's just movable, but trapped. As you can see, it's not visible on either side. So you can lengthen it a bit so that it is approximately the same length as the other tails you have, and then you can move on and do that next pair. So once you've done this pair and the one after it, it'll be anchored in place and you won't be able to move it any further. So, make this is your opportunity to change the length of that tail. So knit in C, purl in A. Knit in C, purl in A. So that's 2 CA pairs. And what happens to B in those CA pairs? B just ends up stranding from the last point it was used to the next time it's about to be used, which is now. We're about to do a couple more, or 3 more, AB pairs. So back to AB pairs for 3 pairs, and then after that we've got another color change. Okay, so that's 3 pairs in AB, and now we have the gray square in the chart, which is a BC pair. That means that we're going to knit in B, it's our dark color here, and purl in C, our accent color, our 3rd color. So note that C is used on both of the motif colors. It's just used as the knit in the first one and the purl in the second one. And after you've done 2 of those BC pairs, you can move on with AB pairs for the rest of the row. Now, when you get to the end of the row, you're going to do a slipped pair just as you normally would. The number of yarns that you do the slipped pair with really makes very little difference, since the whole point of the slipped pair is that you aren't working it. So if you've got 3 colors rather than 2, it really doesn't matter how many yarns you aren't working it with. And so here I am at the slipped pair, yarns to the back, slip 1 purlwise, yarns to the front, slip 1 purlwise. Same as usual, but just with 3 colors. And just as normal, the ends, in this case all 3 of them, are going to stick out in between the stitches of the last pair, in between the knit and the purl to the front, which means that as we turn it over, it is ready to go with them at the back, ready to knit with. So, as you can see, we have motif a bit of motif here, a bit of motif here, different colors of motif though, and you can see a subtle difference between those two sections. Here we've got C showing up on the front of the work on layer 1. Here we've got B showing up on the front of the work, but C showing up on the back. You can see it's pearls here. If I flip it over, it shows up as knits. So on the way back, on layer 2, row 4, we are now going to get to do that multicolor linked pair. So when I teach my standard double knitting workshops or double knitting workshops that use 2 colors, I tell you that the direction of twist doesn't really matter that much in the linked pair, but it kind of matters. If you twist in one direction, you'll get a nice simple twist, and if you twist in the other direction, you end up with more twist than you really need. If you twist too much, you end up with a bit of a lump close to the edge of your work. But in 3 colors, it actually kind of does matter which direction you wrap the yarn in order to make sure that the or twist the yarn to make sure that the linked pair works every single time. So as I alluded to before, and I'm going to bring the handout back in for just a moment here, we're here in row 4, and you can see that there is a linked pair. It looks exactly the same as the linked pair here, but it actually is worked slightly differently. It starts off the same, but there is a third step, to deal with that third color. That third step can't really be done within a single pair. It is actually done in this pair right here, the pair right next to it. There's no special symbol for this. Perhaps there should be, but there's no special symbol. It's just that if you come to a multicolor linked pair, or rather, if you come to a linked pair symbol in the chart, and what you have is 3 colors coming off of that last row, you need to do a multicolor linked pair in order to make sure that the third color is also anchored into the edge. Otherwise, it's going to go all the way to the edge from the last point where it was used, around here, all the way to the edge, not get linked in, and then just sort of trail back and probably make a hole right around here somewhere. So we don't want to end up with a hole. It would only show up on 1 layer, but we can do better than that if we just make sure that we anchor in that third color at the edge. So I'll show you how that goes. Now, of course, you can rewatch this technique a number of times, but also I am going to be demoing it a number of times because I have, edge after edge after edge as we move up this little swatch. So, as I mentioned, it starts out the same way. So we're going to do a knit through the back of the loop, in this case with our color B, just matching the knit color from the row below. Then yarns to the front. And then we're going to do a twist between the knit color and the purl color, A and B in this case. This twist really should be a counterclockwise twist, meaning if you were to hold this out of the way, just look at the 2 yarns, and just look straight down at them and twist. You're going counterclockwise versus clockwise. you go counterclockwise, you end up with the smallest functional amount of twist. You don't need more twist than that. So functionally what that means is you grab the color that you're about to purl and you wrap it around to the front like this from underneath, and then finish the purl. Note how they cross over each other. What is happening to color C does not really matter at this point. Just note that color A and B are linking together. This is what makes sure that the edge remains closed. Same as normal. But now if I stretch out, you can see that the standard linked pair is already there, but the multicolor linked pair has yet to be done since the third color is still separate from those other two. So at this point what we do is we just do something very similar to the move that I just did with the purl, but with the next knit and the color C. So I'm going to take the next color I need, it's color B in this case, and I'm going to take it from underneath and wrap it around to the front of color C. And from that point, your color C is still at the back, everything is still at the back so that you can knit. But color B is now wrapped around to the front of color C, and you can see color C sort of lying on top of it like that. And then from that vantage point, you're going to finish the knit. And you can already see a little bit of color C sucked into the bottom of that. We can clean that up a little bit by just giving a tug to C. Now, if you want to check your work, you can take a look at the color C end and just tug on it a little bit. You can see that it's coming out of the last place it was used, or trapped, getting trapped under a little bit of the pearl color. Excuse me, under a little bit of the knit color, and then coming out along with the other two ends. So as long as that little bit is wrapping around it, then you did your multicolor linked pair correctly. Now, there are still only 3 stitches on here, and everything must be done in pairs, therefore even numbers, so we do need to make sure we finish that second pair. Nothing more needs to be done with color C at this point, until we need it again. So that's a multicolor linked pair. There's another thing that's going on here that is important to note. Again, going to bring the handout in. So note that the last time that color C was used was in this motif right here. It's used as a purl here. It'll be used as knits in the next part of that motif right here. But it's not being used at all from here to here. Now, that doesn't look like a very big distance as the crow flies, but the point is that the crow is not flying. The yarn is going all the way from here to here and then back again, which means that it's actually traveling quite a distance without being used. It's very easy for the yarn to distort the fabric if it's stranded for too long and not given any slack. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So right here, having just done the multicolor linked pair, if I tug on it, note how it sort of squeezes everything in, because what it's doing is I'm pulling on it, it's going around a little fulcrum right here at the end, and then tugging on the last time it was used here, which is compressing all of these stitches down. We don't want to compress them, so I'm going to give it a little tug, and you can kind of see color C getting sucked back down in where it should be to give a little bit of slack. So the point is that if you haven't used any color in a long while, in this case it's mostly going to be color C, but depending on the pattern, there may be other situations where a color is not used that is not color C for a certain distance. anything more than, say, 5 or 6 pairs, you should probably just give the fabric a little bit of a tug to lengthen the strand just a bit, not too much. You can stretch this quite a distance, and what will end up happening if you do this is that you're going to end up giving it too much slack, and you'll probably end up with the yarn trying to escape out one side or the other. So just a little bit of tug just to make sure that the fabric doesn't distort because of the strand running inside. And we'll do that again just before we use the color. But for now, we're just doing BA pairs. We are now on layer 2, which means that we're following the layer 2 entries in the key. And so the plain non-motif background section of this chart is worked as BA, not as AB, same as it would be in standard double knitting. So I'm working up to 5 pairs on the needle, including the linked pair, before I do my next color change. And again, at this point, you have an opportunity to give your work a little bit of a tug, and I just generally sort of hold on to where the multicolor linked pair is, which is just right on the edge between the first pair and the second one. You'll be able to feel a little bit of a lump right there. So just give it a little tug, make sure you've got a little slack, and then you can move on with your with your CB pairs. Now, the CB pairs that you have here, they show up as gray on the chart. On this layer, the gray is going to be on the back as the purl stitches, so that it'll show up on the front when you turn it over. A good way to check your work is that if you know that these two pairs that were previously color changed in the row below are going to match the ones above them, you want to make sure that the span of color work you're about to do is the same color order as these two pairs. So we're going to do CB pairs. And yes, it does match what's in the row below for the two in the middle. Okay. So then back to BA just for a single pair. And then we're into the red color in the chart. We are on layer 2 again, and so these are going to be worked as AC pairs. And just as the previous one, you can check against the last time that color showed up in the previous row. You see it from this point of view as AC pairs, so that will help guide you as to what color order you're supposed to be working here. You can, of course, just watch the chart of the key, but it's sometimes nice to have another reminder from within the work that tells you what you need to do. All right, having finished those 4 pairs, we're back to BA pairs till the end of the row. All right, so you can now begin to see a little bit of the motif. Having done 2 rows, you can see the motif more clearly, or you can see at least the first row of the motif, and of course the further you go, the more of the motif you'll be able to see. If you notice that this first stitch is a little loose, you can just give that tail a little tug and that will snug it back up again. So, we're now going to move on to row 5. And this is just going to be a repeat of the way row 3 works, but with a slightly different or slightly different chunk of the motif. So I'm going to demo the multicolor linked pair again. I'm going to give a little bit of slack to my that's my tail, to my color C. Be careful if your tail at this point is particularly long that you don't end up working it rather than your actual active end. But that shouldn't be too much of a concern as we get further in. So I'm going to start off with that multicolor linked pair again. So I've done a knit through the back of the loop for the first stitch in color A, yarns to the front, twist and purl between A and B. Don't worry about what color C is doing, and you want to do a counterclockwise twist if at all possible. Bring the yarns to the back. You can note that color C is still separate. Put your needle into the next stitch as if to knit. Twist A and C together, or whatever your knit color is. In this case it is A. Again, counterclockwise if at all possible. And then finish that knit. Then don't forget to complete the pair with a color B. So I've done my my multicolor linked pair. You can see that the color C is now trapped and now traveling along with the other 2 yarns. At this point, it's a good idea to give yourself a little bit of extra slack. This is not necessary in every row, but in these first couple of rows where you have a total of something like 11 pairs without ever using color C, combined, 6 and then 5, or 5 and then 6 in adjacent rows. It's not quite the same as having them all in a row within a row, but it's still a risk for compression of the work. So I just like to give the work a little bit of a tug to make sure that there's enough slack on color C before I move on, and I'll double check that again before I use color C in this row for the first time. Okay, so again I'm going to give the work just a little tug, and then I'm going to go ahead with my CA pairs, 3 of them in a row here. And then 1 AB pair, and then 3 BC pairs. And finally, back to AB pairs for the rest of the row. Oops. Sure, we're sticking with the same color order that we have in the row below. There we go. All right. So, still more of the motif is growing out of this, and again, you can check the reference chart on your handout to check to see that what you're seeing here on layer 2 is correct. Layer 1 looks like the chart. Layer 2, under normal circumstances, would just look like the same chart in reversed color and reversed orientation, but here, because you can't just reverse the color, you have to do a reference chart that shows how the colors line up on the other layer. So, the next row is a little tricky, but not very tricky as long as you pay attention to the chart. Note that in row 6, we do continue narrowing these petals of this, the 2 bottom petals of this flower, but we're also starting the other 2, or the next 2 petals. So don't forget this and this square when you reach that point. This is again a layer 2 row. You don't have anything to guide you on this in the row below, so just follow the key. You can also look ahead, look at how the last time this color appeared on the previous row would have been done all the way over here, and just mimic that here. I'm going to do this, but I'm also going to start talking about yarn management, because as we do more and more of this color work, yarn management is going to become more and more necessary to keep track of. And by yarn management, I mean the tendency of your yarn to twist up, right? Well, that would be what would happen in a 2-color piece. But in 3 colors, it's a bit more than just a simple twist. And what you can see on screen right now looks like just a simple twist, and I should just be able to let it all dangle out and it'll be fine. And maybe that is the case, but probably not entirely. So I'm actually going to take the active ends and just sort of separate them. This is not really the way I would do it, but just in an attempt to keep them on screen so that you can see the relationship between the 3 colors. So what I have here is a bunch of uneven twist. Now, you might call this braid. It's not actually all that close to a braid right now, but it can be. So I've got a little bit of twist with C, not very much, but with A and B I have a significant amount. Now this is probably related mostly to the linked pairs, because I do twist A and B together, but I also twist C with the other two colors, or with the other two colors, alternating depending on which row I'm beginning with. So it is very likely that I am just subconsciously, in a way, adjusting as I do my color work to make sure that I don't end up with too much braid. So when I say braid, it's a description of something that is a lot cleaner than what really happens. A braid is something that, if you have 3 strands, you take 2 of them and fold them over each other, and then take the third one and fold it over with one of those other 2, and then, back and forth and back and forth. You know how a braid works. That is the same kind of thing that can happen here, rather than just a simple twist. And so if it starts getting bad, if it starts getting unmanageable and you can't just push it away and push it away, you can do that up to a certain point, but eventually you are going to have to deal with that that braid. And you can do it with just playing leapfrog with your yarn balls to manually undo all the twist. But I like to figure out how to do it on the fly, how to undo the twist and the braid on the fly. Partially because I've done a lot of work on public transit, pre-COVID mostly, and the it's impractical to take all the balls of yarn out of your bag and move them around and potentially lose them down the aisle of a crowded plane. The fear there. And so, because it's impractical to manage the twist and the braid that way, I figured out how to manage it in other ways. And so at every color change you have an opportunity, may have an opportunity, to undo a little bit of twist, depending on a number of things. But every time you do the multicolor linked pair, you are adding a little bit more braid, and there's nothing that you can do about that. So you're going to end up with a bit of counterclockwise twist between your A and your B, and then you're going to end up with another bit of counterclockwise twist between your, one of your other 2 colors and your color C, depending on which layer you're on. So here, as you can kind of see, it would be better for me to take this yarn from behind so I can undo a little bit of twist, but because I'm trying to be consistent about my edges, I am going to actually be adding more twist, which is okay here because there are other ways of getting rid of it. It's just the edge is not really one of those places. So I'm going to continue this by making a twist between my B and C and then finishing my knit to complete the multicolor linked pair. And then just do my purl in A. There we go. So, I am not going to do another color change until a couple more pairs on, so I only have the opportunity to undo twist at color changes, and not guaranteed at every color change. Just some color changes will give you the opportunity and some won't, depending on what the twist is between, what you're using, where exactly you're using it. And it's a bit of an art form. So the more you do this, the more you'll be able to see how you can undo twist or add more twist. And really the only reason why it's important to know how to add more twist is so that you can do the opposite of that whenever possible. So I am on row 6. I have worked 4 pairs of the background color order, which is BA. And now the first thing I'm going to run into is that red colored square, which is on layer 2. This is a layer 2 row. You can tell both by the fact that it starts with an even number, and also by the fact that as you are working it, the background of the piece is your dark color, your B. It's another way to tell whether you're on a layer 1 or layer 2 row. So at this point, I get a chance to do an AC pair. And so I have a little bit of twist between my C and the other 2 colors. More twist between A and B. But I can tell that if I take my A from right here, I might undo just a bit of twist between the A and B. It's really the knit color that gives you the option to undo twist. The pearl color just sort of follows along. So when you do the pearl in any given pair, you generally don't have opportunity to undo more twist there. You just use the knit to do that. Now there may be specialized cases where you do, but in general you don't. So we've got our BA pairs, 1 AC pair. As I mentioned before, I have no way of guiding myself from the row below on what color order this is supposed to be, so you have to check the key, or you can look forward to the last time that color appeared, which is over here, and see that it's in AC over here, so that's what you need here. So then I'm going to do 2 BA pairs. I do have a good amount of twist between my A and my B, so this is another good opportunity for me to take a little bit of that out by taking this color from over the top like this. I have an inordinate amount of counterclockwise twist, which means I want to try to do clockwise twist to counteract it. And of course I have counterclockwise twist because that's the way I do my linked pairs. With a counterclockwise twist. So I'm going to take my B from right there, let my A fall into place. Okay. The next one is just a repeat of the same color order, so no change there. And then the next 2 are matching what you have in the row below. Here, I've already lost a certain amount of the twist, but it's also getting pushed further away, and so just every now and then it's a good idea to push the twist closer to where you're working. If I were actually doing this, it would be a little more natural looking, but just again, to try to keep it on screen, I'm pushing it a little differently. Okay, there we go. So now you can see what's left. There's still some twist between B and A, but not that much. So now I have my color C. It's sort of doing a bunch of clockwise twist around both of the other 2 colors, so I'm going to take it from underneath, a counterclockwise twist, to try to counteract a little bit of that. Oh, and here's a bit where I said you can't undo twist on the purl, but here you actually can. There are some specific situations where it can happen, and I'm actually going to take my purl color from back here. You see how that undoes a little bit more twist. And one more pair of the same color order, no change in twist or braid here. And now I've got another BA pair, which gives me another bit of opportunity to undo the twist between my A and my B. And then we're on to, again, AC pairs, which matches what we have in the row below. So my A is already present here. I can't and shouldn't really try to do any twisting here, because if I do, the transit from the purl A in the previous pair to the knit A will be obscured by a bit of twist of one or both of the other colors. So if your knit color is the same as the purl color you just did, try not to do any weird extra undoing of things, just to make sure that there's a clean transition from purl to knit. So I can already feel that there is considerably less twist, but again here I have a BA pair, which means that I'm probably going to want to undo a little twist with a clockwise color change. There we go. And then we've got one last color change here. This is the one that everyone forgets, because you get to the end of this petal, you start to do your background colors, and then you just sort of coast along. But there's one more color change, two more color changes, because there's one to the motif and then one back to the background again. So I'm going to do a, this is the gray color, and we're on layer 2, which means this is a CB pair. Again, you can check it against the last time you used the gray color in this row. CB, there we are. So we're going to hit in our C. And oh, this looks like another situation where I actually can undo a little bit on the purl. I think it actually was last time I had a CB pair too, so so there we are. All right, then we're going to do one more little clockwise twist back to BA, in the hopes that this will undo the majority, if not all, of the braid or uneven twist that I've had. And of course, the more color changing you do, the more likely it is you're going to end up with more of that. So you're just going to go on with your next several rows, and when you end up with more twist than you can handle or want to deal with in your ends, you can do another row or two like that, which allows you to manage some of that twist. So let's take a look and see how we did. I'm just going to basically take the 3 yarns, run them through my fingers, and simplify, simplify, simplify down to that. So as you can see, it's considerably better than it was. There's still a tiny amount of twist between C and the other two, but that could just be the way that I chose to pick them up from the active ends too. The other thing that I highly recommend doing before you do any of the stuff that I just showed you is let the work dangle out. There wasn't any real necessity to do that given the twist that I had, but is always possible that it's going to look worse than it is. So if you have a bunch of, just the 3 yarns like this, twisted around each other evenly, you can undo a bunch of that by just letting the work dangle out. I mean, I can't, again, do that easily on screen, but I can, let's make me go the other way. There we go. So that will take out the twist and leave only the braid. So it will simplify it so that even if it looks a lot more complex than you want to deal with, it might not be that complex. Once you take the twist out of the equation, the braid is all you have left to deal with, and that's really the most important thing. Okay, so I may have jumped the gun a little bit on that row, but it was a good one. There was a lot of opportunity there to show it, and it worked well. The reason I say I may have jumped the gun on that is because I also wanted to show a little bit about how to keep that from happening. And honestly, maybe this is a perfectly good place to start, because at this point there's not really any twist or braid. Now there's going to be some from the linked pair, the multicolor linked pair, but everywhere else in the row there's not really a need to have a lot of twist or braid. Every time you do a color change within any given row, you only need to rotate this whole thing around like this. And I'll show you what I mean by that as we start in on this next row. So I'm first going to just do the multicolor linked pair, starting off with a standard linked pair, and then finishing with a link between C and whatever my knit color is, in this case A, and finishing with whatever my pearl color is, in this case B. So that has added a tiny amount of braid, but for the moment I'm just going to push it away as if it weren't there, and just look at the 3 yarns held together like this. Now, if you have taken one of my either intro or advanced beginner workshops, you have more than likely run into something that I call the ribbon analogy. And so I want to reiterate that here, and then I'll show you how it applies to 3 colors. So I'm first going to just take the third color, for illustration purposes, take the third color out of the picture, just holding it away from the other 2. And we're going to imagine that these AB pairs are just normal AB pairs, and I'm only working with A and B and not C. So note that if I hold the 2 yarns together, they become something that looks a little bit like a ribbon. The ribbon has an edge of one color and an edge of the other color. Now, of course, it's not a real ribbon. You can put your finger through the space between the 2 yarns. There's no actual fabric there. It's just a ribbon analogy. It looks like a ribbon. So the ribbon, if you have it at the back versus at the front, note that the ribbon itself doesn't change. All that changes is how it is presented to the needle. So at the back of the work, the front edge of the ribbon is presented to the needle and is knitted with. Whereas at the front of the work, the back edge of the ribbon is presented to the needle, ready to be purled with. Now I'll have to undo that because I do need to have my third color in there, but for now, just as an illustration, you can see that the front edge of the ribbon is generating the front layer of the work. The back edge of the ribbon is generating the back layer of the work, so that while I'm on a layer 1 row doing the background, I have A generating the A color at the front, B generating the B color at the back. So as long as the ribbon just moves back and forth and there are no color changes, there's no reason the ribbon ever needs to twist. The ribbon does twist at the very beginning in order to link the fabric together along the edge. The same thing will happen if you do a twist somewhere within the row. You'll end up with a link between the layers somewhere in the middle of the row, and the side effect of that is that one of those colors is going to end up peeking out between two stitches, obscuring that bar that goes in between knit and knit. It may be more visible on one layer than the other, depending on a number of things. But that is just a piece of the story, because we actually do have a third color here, and so we need to deal with that. So I'm going to bring it back here a little bit. All right. So I now have 3 colors, and if I were to put them all, let them line up, I do get something that looks a little like a ribbon, but this is not actually a functional ribbon, because the important thing about the ribbon analogy is that the 2 yarns are equidistant from each other. Well, any 2 items are always equidistant from one another, because there's only one distance. But once you have a third item, the only way for them to become equidistant from the other 2 is to enter the third dimension and not just lay them all flat in the second dimension, because as you can see, the distance between A and C here is shorter than the distance between B and C. But if we enter the third dimension here and put C underneath, makes a little triangle. So this is the prism analogy. It's like the ribbon analogy, but in 3 dimensions. And this is even more of an analogy than the previous one, because this is really just not practical to do. It is practical, actually, to hold your yarns together as a ribbon, because that naturally happens. This is not something that naturally happens to 3 yarns held together. You have to force them into this shape. But if you understand what is going on with this shape, you can actually simulate it in some ways as you are working your row. So the important thing about this prism is that it is made up of 3 ribbons. So we've got an AB ribbon. And you can see it right here. You can see maybe a little peak of color C that's underneath. It's hanging out down there, right? But what I'm looking at right now, what you're looking at, is an AB ribbon. If I rotate the prism, I get a CA ribbon. And if I rotate it again, I get a BC ribbon. So the front edge is generating the front layer, the back edge is generating the back layer. You may also think of these as the bottom edge and the top edge, depending on how you hold them and how you're looking at them. It's very easy to imagine them as bottom and top, but I think of them as front and back because partially it's just a slight change in angle to think of it that way, but also because the front layer generates the front, or the front edge of the ribbon generates the front layer, etc. It has some poetic justice to it. If we were just holding this, if it was possible to hold this as a prism at all times, and all you were doing was AB pairs, BC pairs, and CA pairs, as you would be and should be in a layer 1 row, then all that would ever happen is that the whole thing would twist around, back and forth, whatever, in whichever direction you move it, but never braid, only twist. And that's easy to deal with. You can just let it dangle out if you want to. So throughout a row, as long as you can try to keep the form of that prism in mind as you do your color changing, you won't get a braid. In order to braid it, what has to happen is that you pull one of those 2 yarns in between the other 2, rather than just rotating and taking it from there. You don't rotate and take it from here, in between. Doing that creates an uneven twist, either with A and C or B and C, depending, and it can happen with any of the yarns. If I were working on a CA ribbon, I could pull B in between them. So there are a lot of ways to make that mistake happen, and a lot to keep in mind as you go. So it may not really be practical to think about it in terms of a prism, but it is something that as you do more of this sort of 3-color work, you will start to almost subconsciously do it, because you can watch how the twist happens and how each color change may make more twist or less twist depending on where you pick up the various colors. So, interestingly enough, this particular prism cannot generate BA, CB, or AC pairs. Right? There's no way to get those things except to take it and turn it inside out, just as I showed you. To pull any one of those strands in between the other 2, that generates a ribbon a prism in the opposite set of color orders. Now, BA, CB, AC. And that's what you need on layer 2. But we're on layer 1 right now. So when you get to layer 2, you will need to reverse that a little bit, reverse that prism, which potentially adds a little bit more twist somewhere, depending on exactly how you do that reversal. Now, as I mentioned, you are doing some braiding at the beginning of every row in the multicolor linked pair anyway. So if you just keep that as an opportunity to rearrange your prism, so to speak, at the very beginning, then everywhere else that color changes happen, there should not be any further twist or braid. And all that should be happening is twist like this, which can be easily undone. So, as with the previous row, where I showed how to undo twist that you have created, In this row, I'm going to show you how to try not to end up with more twist. And so even though I do have a bit of twist still in my ends from the multicolor linked pair, I'm just sort of pushing it away so that you don't see it on screen. It will be dealt with at a later date or a later time, likely not even within this workshop. But at least for this next row, which is row 7, I'm going to try to show the prism in action. So for now I cannot really hold it as a prism and continue working, but I'm going to show you how it would work as an analogy at least. So I've got the prism as I'm starting this next pair. It's just one more pair in AB before the first color change. You can see that I've got my color C down here at the bottom, and my A and B creating the ribbon that I am using to generate this pair. So knit from that A, purl from the B, and C is underneath. Now I'm switching to BC, so I'm going to rotate the prism just a bit. It's going to be a lot more of a cleaner rotation once the first pair is done. So go ahead and do that first pair in CB. Let color A now drop to the bottom of the prism, and then as you do those did I say CB? BC pairs. Do as I say, not as I do. Do as I do, not as I say. Whatever. So as you do any group of the same color order in a row, there's no need to add more twist or change the orientation of the ribbon or prism in any way. So now I'm back to a couple pairs in AB, and I'm going to rotate the prism again. Sending color C to the bottom once again. Now I've just got a single CA pair here, so I'm going to again rotate this prism so that I've got my CA ribbon facing up. Knit in C, purl in A, leaving B at the bottom. And then there is an immediate color change back to AB again here. So we're going to rotate that prism once more. And then another rotation to BC. And then back to AB again for a couple of pairs. Okay, then we're going to be doing CA pairs for the next three. Now you can see here that my C is trying to encroach on the the color order that I would prefer, and trying to pull itself in between the layers. So in a situation like that, just push it back to where it needs to be, back to, you know, the correct arrangement for an AB pair ribbon on the top of an ABC prism. And then you should be able to rotate that prism again to CA. And then finally, 3 more pairs, or 2 pairs and a slipped pair, in AB. And at no point during that row did I allow any further braid to show up beyond the braid that has to happen from the multicolor linked pair. Now, lest you wonder why I'm calling it a multicolor linked pair rather than a 3-color linked pair, it's because that same method works for 4 colors as well. So if that's something that interests you, I do have another workshop called, as I mentioned earlier, Multicolor Double Knitting, which takes you through 3 colors and 4 colors. And the chart is different too, so the 3-color section is using the same techniques as we're doing here, but it's a different chart, and then halfway through we add in a 4th color as well. So the same technique basically works for 4, 5, 10 colors, however many are traveling inside get anchored in with that 3rd move, regardless of you know, whether it's a single strand or 2 or more. It's basically treated as a single strand, and that 3rd move works for 3 colors, 4 colors, or more. Hence, multicolor, not just 3-color. So at this point, I do have some twist, but just twist. I am willing to bet that if I were to undo this twist, I'm going to get almost no actual braid. So let's test that. I'm actually going to simulate just dangling it out, but it's impractical to do here. So I'm just going to undo the twist by moving the piece itself. Yeah, resulting in basically no actual twist, just the twist I would have ended up with, or no actual braid, just what I would have ended up with from doing a couple of multicolor linked pairs. So, all right, so you have now everything you need to continue this little swatch. A couple of quick caveats. I'm going to bring the handout back in again. So in row 10, you are going to need to be very careful about how long that strand is, because we're going from here, where we last used color C, all the way to the edge, and then all the way down here to the middle before C is ever used again. So be very careful, in the same way we were careful down here, to give yourself a little extra slack so that color C doesn't distort the fabric in here. And then everything else is more or less just doing all of this kind of in reverse, getting down to the same 2, opposite colors, but the same shape of the pattern down here. So when you get to the end of row 17, you will have the opportunity to break your yarns. Break your C. Don't break all of them, because you still need A and B to go through 18 and 19. Just as we did in at the beginning of this little swatch, we use A and B only for the first couple of rows, in which A and B only show up. C is not used until we get to row 3, and so we add it in. And then in row 17, C ends. We don't need it past row 17, and so we break it with a tail after row 17 is done. And so you end up with another tail very similar to the tail that you have sticking out of the edge around row 3. And you go on and do the rest of the work as if it were any standard double knit piece. 2 more rows in AB and BA, and or other way around, because it's layer 2 and then layer 1. And then a bind off. And the bind off is, I don't cover the bind off in these workshops because it's the same bind off that you would have used in any other workshop you've taken from me, and also it's on YouTube. So I've got the cast on and the bind off and the selve edges all covered on YouTube, and so, you know, in the workshop itself we just focus on the stuff I don't have covered on YouTube. So that's that. As I said, you have everything you need to complete this swatch. You also have everything you need to, if you so choose, do this swatch. You could even do this swatch on top of the other swatch rather than binding off, since you've got a nice foundation. But do remember that if you broke your yarn at row 17, you're going to have to add it back in again as you begin row 1. Now, I might suggest that you replace row 19 with row 1, or add another row, because you do want to make sure you're beginning chart 2 here on a layer 1 row. Otherwise it's going to get a little messy. Also, if you are moving on with chart 2 as an exercise without binding off, you should do a linked pair here where there isn't one. I generally do not do a linked pair at the beginning of any given row. Sorry, any given first row in any given piece. So the first row doesn't have a linked pair because it's right next to the cast on, and the same is true here. So if you have any questions, feel free to stick them in the comments field below this video, and I will get to your questions as quickly as I'm able. And if you're interested in going further with these techniques, I mentioned I have a 2-pattern workshop that also deals with 3 colors. I have a multicolor workshop that deals with 3 and 4. And I've got a host of other workshops, both live, virtual, and recorded. So I hope to see you in some future workshop. Or if I don't see you, I hope you'll see me in some future recording. Thanks, and have a good one. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to come back anytime and use it as a reference as you expand your double knitting knowledge and repertoire. I intend to release more of these recorded virtual workshops, as well as more and more advanced tutorials on double knitting in the future. If you want to be notified on when those drop, please subscribe to this channel, or join my mailing list, or visit my blog. If you feel so inclined, please consider dropping a tip at my Ko-fi page, linked below, if you'd like to offer more regular support to my continued development of double knitting techniques and help ensure more of these videos are forthcoming. Please consider joining my Patreon. Higher tiers also get free patterns and downloadable versions of my videos. If you're interested in my books or patterns, digital copies are available on Ravelry and elsewhere, linked from my website. Depending on when you view this, physical copies may still be available. Thanks again, and stay adventurous.